Thank you.
That was practice one.
Okay, good.
All right. We'll go ahead and bring this special meeting together to order here for the Parks Board today, Natrona County Parks Board. Today, we're discussing some signage. Parks Board here is Jim Miller, Doug Irvin, got it right today, myself, Stuart Hill. And we also have then our Parks Director and Assistant Director. And I'm going to turn this over to Michael now to do the introductions for the rest of the group.
All right, we're here today to discuss wayfinding sign program for Casper Mountain. We've been working on this for several months, and we have a package together. We have our consultants from RDG Planning and Design. Ryan Peterson's the lead. Kenny, I'm going to butcher his last name, Okibo, and he's helped a lot with the GIS and the planning of all this. So I'm going to turn it over to them to kind of give a quick synopsis of the project and what they've done so far. Real quick, we're going to have some constraints on what we can discuss in changing. The sign template is not going to change. We've thoroughly gone through the locations and the information on here, but we'll take comments and suggestions on that, and then we'll take those back and go through those and finalize this plan so we can send it out to bid. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, thanks, Michael, and good evening to everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to present this, and we'll try to keep this brief, perhaps 10 to 15 minutes or so, and I think conversation is probably the most fruitful way in which we will be able to take this information and move it forward. So I'm Ryan Peterson, and obviously Kenny Okibo is also been introduced. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and so a little bit about the agenda. We'll just talk briefly about the background, our scope of work, some of the input we've received already, some of the changes we made because of that input, and then what we're suggesting as a phase one bid package. So real quick here, try not to get too far into the weeds on this. In 2020, which seems like an eternity ago, pre-pandemic, the MPO hired us, and we did a wayfinding master plan that encompassed all of the county. However, it was focused on the urban areas, and we went through a lengthy public input process. We had input that was provided to us at David Street Station, and ultimately that input led to the design and development of a wayfinding package that has been adopted and is awaiting implementation on the MPO side. However, the county, based on tourism and based on users and the increase in outdoor activities, has elected to move forward with the implementation of a kind of a project focused more on the mountain. It's worth noting that the signs that you've seen in your packet and the signs that are showing up here on the screen are being developed in accordance with the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control, which is the regulatory manual that governs all signage that is provided by FHWA and then implemented at the state and county level. And so there are things that we can change. There are things that we can't change. A lot of the arrows, the typography, the colors that we can use, the size of the fonts, what goes on the signs, the number of characters, those are all elements that are governed by that manual. It's worth noting that that manual serves as a very, it's code and or law, depending on who you ask, but it also offers guidance. And so there's kind of two levels that we follow. And where it's guidance, sometimes we push the boundaries. One example of that is it's typically advised that wayfinding signs, directional signs, only have 3 destinations listed on them. We believe in our professional judgment that, having 4 is probably okay, and a lot of it depends on the speed in which traffic is moving. Our schedule for this specific project and this kind of phase 1 implementation started back in March, really in earnest, I think, in June of 2021. earlier this year when we moved forward with the public workshop and implementation. We received input on site. We had a workshop. Kenny and Colt McDermott, who's not on the phone with us here, went out in the field and located each of the signs, and we've been working on that. And now today, I guess in this next coming month, we're looking for formal approval of the overall plan, and then we'll be moving forward with the specifications for bidding. That'll take place in February and March, and then construction would be this coming spring and summer. The public input that we've received, and I'll lean on Kenny here in a moment to kind of talk a little bit about some of the input we received at the open house. But we did a number of interviews, and I think, I know in particular, Jim, we met with you and heard your input. We also met with a number of individuals from the Wyoming Trails Alliance, those individuals from the Nordic Club, Biathlon, and we wanted to make sure that we covered all of the stakeholders. And I'm sure I didn't list all of them. I know it was about six different user groups that represented and probably crossed over in between various different users on the mountain. But a few key things we heard is out with the old, in with the new. There's a lot of signs that have been put up by various users and landowners on the county level and the state level. Bottom line is we want something that's consistent and uniform. Secondly, we need to make sure that when we put these signs up, and this gets more into park-specific recommendations, we need to make sure that we're clearly marking the park boundaries. There's some concerns about people moving from one place to another and not knowing that they're either on private land or that they're moving into an area where they could be in harm's way, for example, at the archery range. And so we just want to make sure that we're clearly marking those park boundaries. And, we need to make sure that the signs can be legible in all seasons, winter and summer. And then safety was also a concern, knowing where you're at on the mountain. It's worth noting that some of these recommendations and comments, some of them will be very much covered on the content that goes on signs, for example, in park kiosks, which we are not currently doing with this scope of work. That's kind of the next phase. And so it's not that it won't be addressed, but if you're wondering how are we addressing some of these items, it will be more on a park-specific implementation of the park kiosks and then marking the trails along the way. And so we'll get there, but it's not necessarily in this phase one bid package. Wayfinding, we heard a lot about people taking a wrong turn, not knowing where they are going, or perhaps even driving down private lanes. And so, we want to make sure that this signage system is helping them navigate around. Flexibility, that was key. We heard about that. And then making sure that we identify the top 10 park and trip rules. That's probably more specific to some of the kiosks and more pedestrian-orientated wayfinding within each park. Integrating technology, and then making sure that we use the correct park symbology and I can't say it right now, the iconography. I'm probably butchering that. But essentially looking to, make sure that we use universal symbols that are recognized to promote specific activities. And some of that gets more into pedestrian type signage, and some of it shows up also within vehicular signage. Some of the input, in a moment here, we'll walk through the changes, but we presented a preliminary system back in June, and it was down at the courthouse. We had input from a number of folks who represent various demographics and user groups on the mountain. And generally speaking, I think the sign system and the designs were well received. There wasn't pushback. I think people were appreciative of the fact that this project is moving forward. And then we did get a number of proposed changes and or additions. And Kenny, maybe can you shed light on some of the highlights, I guess, of those key things that we heard? I think biathlon came up, some of those other elements, but feel free to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. To take a step back, excuse me, before we came out on site, we went through every, as best we could, we digitally placed every sign in the location we thought that would make the most sense, and using both the data that Google Maps and Apple Maps are using to route individuals to different locations, and then also what seemed like the most logical route getting to different locations. From that, we used the prioritized list of the key destinations, and we made our best guess as to what order they should appear on signs, and then also where those signs would be placed. When we were on site, we heard that we were right on some things, but then there were other things that needed some correction. Number one, we weren't noting biathlon early enough. We had it on there, but we noted from the reception to the public meeting that that needed to be a higher priority. So we went back in our system and refit to make sure that we were letting individuals know a little bit earlier. Also routing to assembly camp / pile, and then as we mentioned already, biathlon were a few of the other notes that came up. As you'll see on screen, we originally had proposed 39 signs, and as we went through with a lot of help from Michael and the rest of the team, we were able to pare down that to a system which is a succinct about 32 signs right now. But those are some of the overall additions, changes, and improvements that we were able to make from the feedback we received.
Thanks, Kenny. And just to kind of go through a few more details about this before we pause and look for your feedback. There are other components to this. Part of our scope of work is based on creating monuments. That's really not the focus of what we're here tonight to discuss it, and likely there is not budget right now to construct these, but we did want to make sure that we took a holistic view, and so and that we're not designing these signs in a silo. So we did share a couple different options that were well received, and ultimately we've been working with the DOT and the county to locate some of these elements that are within the public right-of-way and on state roads in some circumstances, as you see here. And then secondly, the kiosks, which are very important when you pull up to a park and you're looking, for directions or looking for a map or some place in which you can receive more information about the, we'll call it the, how challenging a trail might be, how long a trail might be, how far you can expect to go. And ultimately, this content would also be synced, ideally, with an online version as well. So what you see here can be easily downloaded to your phone and kept with you while you're out using the parks. So I guess next steps. The county commissioners have budgeted, I believe, about $150,000 for the implementation of a phase 1 project, and the current thinking right now is to move forward with the fabrication and installation of those directional signs. We've been working very closely with Mike and Michael to help us get that far. And then as I mentioned earlier, we moved forward with the formal process of adopting it, and then having the public hearing on plans and specifications, issuing the bid documents, and then awarding a bid to a low qualified bid. And I should say it's also worth noting that we have received feedback from fabricators and contractors. We wanted to make sure that somebody locally could construct these, and there seems to be good interest in that as well. So I guess with that, we can revisit anything you'd like. We are prepared to walk through the system as a whole if there are specific questions about signs on the maps that Mike or Michael has provided you. We can revisit those if you'd like, but I'll pause there, and Kenny or Michael, if there's anything else you'd like to add before we turn it over to the chairman, we can discuss that now too.
No, I think I'm good. That was a good synopsis of the whole system, so I think we're good.
Fantastic. Great information. Board, questions?
Nothing in general, but when we get to specific placement and routing, I'll have some.
Okay. Jim?
I guess just in general is, we've been working on the signage that I've been involved, probably 8 years. And we're getting down closer and closer to the signage and that what we're looking at. But I think it's important that we don't go too fast and forget a lot of the information. Just going over with some of the people who are not familiar with the mountain, as I am, or as a lot of you folks are, I think it's important that those folks know what to do or where to go up there. I know for myself, I don't ever get lost up there, but my wife gets lost as soon as she gets up to the Hogadon turnoff. So it needs to be really clear and precise of what the signs are saying. And if we need to take a little bit more time, I think that's important, that we just don't rush it through right at the end to get the bids out and get construction going if it's not correct. And I think everyone is willing to work on that. That's what I have to say for the general part of it.
Okay. You talked in there about setting park boundaries. Well, go ahead, excuse me, go ahead and answer that. You have any questions for Jim?
Michael, this is Ryan Peterson. I'm not, Jim, when you were speaking, we caught about every third word. And so if somebody could repeat the comment or question, we would appreciate it. We can hear you, Michael, loud and clear. I don't know if the microphones are too far away, but what was the question?
What would you like me to say, Ryan?
Can you hear him now?
It's a bit better, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Every third word or better?
It's a little bit, it's still a little choppy, but I think we'll get it.
Okay, let me see if we change microphones here.
Yeah. Let's see if we can share that one.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see how about this?
That's much better.
Okay. Basically what I said, Ryan, is that, I've been working on it for 8 years or so on the signage, and we've come a long way with that. And I think we're getting down to close to what the signs are going to say and whatnot. But I think it's important that we don't rush it through right at the end and forget a lot of the things that need to be on there. I think it's important that we do it right, because I don't think this is a one-time chance. I don't think it's ever going to go back to doing it again. So I think it's important we get it right the first time. And including people that, like I said, is I know the mountain real well, and I don't ever get lost up there. But my wife can go to the Hogadon turnoff and get lost immediately. And she goes up there quite a bit, but she still gets lost. And that's just an example of being able to, these signs say exactly what we want them to say for the people who don't know what the mountain looks like or where to go. She's raised here and lived here for all her life. And just for an example, I was just talking to her tonight, and I mentioned to her about the BLM land on Muddy Mountain. She said, I had no idea. And those are the things that are just an example that people that have lived here all their life, that they're not necessarily informed, especially if they don't go up the mountain. And she goes up the mountain a lot, but if we didn't have those maps, she'd be totally lost. So I think it's important that we do it right, and if it takes a little longer time, let's do it, but let's get it done right.
Yeah, I think that's, Ryan, do you mind if I jump in on this one first, and then you can follow up?
Go ahead.
So in terms of making sure that we do it right, cannot agree with you more. The approach that we took on the first phase, which was the MPO project, was to come up with a list of what from polling, not only those that were at David Street Station, but then there was the extensive online polling to make sure that we got as many locations as possible, saw what was most important to different people around the county, some of those destinations being on the mountain, and then that influencing how we prioritize destinations on the mountain. But then taking a long list of all of the destinations which we could feasibly put into one study, and having Michael and Mike help us out in vetting what is most important and what are some of the destinations that have the most traffic going to them, because we do have an outside perspective which helps in this scenario, because when we were on site, we were able to drive around and get lost a little bit too, trying to get to destination B from location A, and that helped us see the perspective of this sign needs to be in this physical location. And we knew that going in, which is why we used GPS coordinates of exactly where that stake is going to go on the ground, so that we've got a clear understanding of, if you are 10 feet back from here, you've got trees in the way, you've got a turn which is difficult to see around, the sign needs to be placed in this specific location so that you know how to get to Hogadon or archery range or Lions Camp, what have you. We wanted to make sure that we were doing the due diligence to make sure that not only did we have the destinations right, and if we don't, let us know what should be added or removed, but not only to make sure we had the destinations right, but to make sure that if you are familiar or are, like us, a little bit less familiar with the mountain, you are able to safely get to point B from point A.
Great information. Yeah, people do get lost up here. I know folks who've been here 40 years and they get up the mountain and it's their first time up there for a ski lesson and they don't know where to go. It boggles me because there's a beautiful mountain and these people don't get up. But on there, I guess I don't see much here for anything else beyond Casper Mountain. Like go to Muddy Mountain or Circle Drive, or those things we want to throw out there to direct people to the next, where else to go on the mountain after they've gone past our last park?
So maybe I can answer that for you,
Thank you.
Stuart. We do have a sign at the four-way intersection at the base of Muddy Mountain. It indicates Muddy Mountain ahead, Highway 487 to the right. We have one further back up the hill before you get to the gravel that says both of those are ahead. So we give direction as you're going off the backside of the mountain as to where the highway's at and where Muddy Mountain is. So maybe that clarifies a little bit. We also have them down by Garden Creek to the Bridle Trail.
Right, okay.
So,
I'm not sure on that one. If that's, it'd be nice to get them back to the mountain, Muddy Mountain Road, at least point them that direction, then the other signs would take over, right? Because, again, a lot of people don't know that, but that's just one to throw out. Doug, you're kind of the mountain guy here.
Yeah, they had initially up at the initial junction past the mailboxes where you go right to Hoganon and left to everything else. They had Muddy Mountain on one of those, indicating everything else is forward.
Douglas, I'm not sure if this is the same for anybody else, but you've cut out for me.
Yeah, sorry, the mics. I was just saying to Stuart that sign 06 includes Muddy Mountain, and that's looks to be placed just before the Y to Hogadon and everything else. So I think that gets people going in the general direction if that's their target, or lets them know that there's another destination when they're up there.
Perfect, I did not see
And then
that. Thank you.
One question on the destinational content. I see some things that don't seem to be public or county destinations, such as Camp Sacagawea and Lions Camp and Camp Wyoba. Are those fully publicly accessible destinations?
It's a great question, I guess, as it relates to wayfinding in general. The MUTCD provides guidance that suggests that public and nonprofit destinations are most definitely encouraged and allowed on signs that are publicly funded. Placing a private destination on here is not permissible, and so going back to some of the early input we received down at whether it was David Street Station or in discussion with individuals, during the public input session on the 14th. Those have a pretty significant, we'll call it regional to, Wyoming-based audience that are creating a draw, and so they rose to the level of needing signs to get motorists there, and so I guess it's not so much do they limit or allow public use. It whether they're nonprofit or a public facility is kind of that determining factor. Now, if this group here felt strongly that we want to reconsider that is definitely on the table as well.
Add a little more spice to the soup, as Ryan was just talking about. One of the things that we also took into consideration was different user groups going to these destinations. So though, yes, Camp Sacagawea may not have traditionally fallen into the camp of what we would have on one of these signs, the fact that it was a destination for various groups, including Girl Scouts, and making sure that people were able to safely find their destination and not get lost on the mountain was something we wanted to have in mind, in making sure that some of these had some notation on the signs.
Thank you.
While we're on that subject, anybody have any troubles using those? I personally don't. I think it's great to have Camp Sac up here and these others, Wyoba. Jim, any questions? Comments?
Just looking at these, I get lost. When you look at it, let's say, sign 11, where is that sign 11 going to be placed at?
Sign 11 is after Skunk Hollow, or actually it's as you're approaching Skunk Hollow headed north is where sign 11 would be. So it's like you're headed towards Casper, so the trail center's ahead, Camp Wyoba is ahead of you, Lions Camp's ahead, and the Elkhorn Springs Campground, it's basically right
Okay.
before you would turn into that campground as you're headed north.
Okay, I didn't have this mapped.
This is the first time we've seen these, so we're kind of tripping over ourselves a little bit here. Excuse us.
No, take your time. Ryan and I have stared at these for quite some time, and honestly, it's fun talking about this with the new faces. So,
Stuart, if you'd like, I can walk us through the map and the signs and kind of give you a quick run through, if that would help everybody.
Let's do that, yeah.
Yeah, that would be
please.
great.
Okay, so the first map you have is going to Rotary Park, or the Bridle Trail. And so sign 1 is as you're going up Wyoming Boulevard, it provides direction on how to get into Rotary Park and the Garden Creek Falls and Bridle Trail. And the other direction it has is basically to go straight ahead up Casper Mountain.
So that's on Casper Mountain Road, just before the Garden Creek split.
Correct.
Yep.
And so then sign 2 is as you would turn into, go to Garden Creek, it's before the turnoff to Rotary Park Road. And basically it says everything's to the left, Rotary Park, Garden Creek Falls, and the Bridle Trail. Sign 3 is the same, but just the opposite direction. So as you look at these maps, there's a line next to the number, the circular number. That is the side of the post that the sign would be on. So you're facing into that is the direction you would be reading it.
So are those signs placed on YDOT land or private land, or?
They would be within the right of way. So YDOT for sign 1, Garden Creek Road, is that county? That's the county road. That's YDOT also. So those are YDOT. All the way up until we get to the Y to branch off to Hogadon would all be in YDOT right away. We've discussed that with YDOT. They're in agreement for us to place the signs in there right away.
Okay, on sign 1, wouldn't Casper Mountain be a arrow pointing up instead of left?
Yeah, there might be, Kenny, maybe you could answer that if there's a better way to point that directional arrow. We could point it straight ahead because that's the main road. Casper Mountain Road's the main
Yeah.
road.
i.e., you're already on that road, and if you continue straight on that road, that will get you to Casper Mountain.
So that there's not a left turn, so they don't think they're, because there is a turn
Yeah,
up there
there
on
is
top
a-
of that hill
Yeah, there's that driveway.
to a subdivision. We want
Yeah.
to keep them out of there.
I think that's an easy enough correction, and.
Yeah.
And we'll go through these with Ryan and Kenny after the meeting with the notes, for sure. Now, are there any other questions about signs 1 through 3?
I think we're good.
Okay, so if you go to the second map, at the top center, you're gonna see signs 4, 5, and 6. These, did you guys find it?
Yep.
So signs 4, 5, and 6 are before the Y. So those are also in the Y dot right away. And those, as you can tell, we had to do 3 signs there because of all the information. We get so many people that stop at the Y to read the signs and figure out what's going on. So by putting them in a progression, as you approach that intersection, you can then determine which way you want to go. That was intent, correct, Ryan?
That is correct, and we have the through traffic, going through, so, and that removes a lot of the audience immediately, and that way, those that are veering right will address them all in one group as well. But yes, we spaced them about right around 175 feet apart. We went out and measured and made sure we had adequate spacing based on the I think it's a 25 or 35 miles per hour up there. And so we wanted to make sure people could read the signs as they come around that corner.
Yeah, that was going to be my question was, because I know there's that tight corner there, and we've got to make sure that there's spacing so they can process the information on 3 signs in a row.
So where does the biathlon center map show which way to go? Is there a map, or is there a signage?
What's that, for the biathlon club?
Yes.
I believe that sign happens. The first intent of biathlon would be on sign 14, which is down by, yeah, let's continue down. Biathlon, we haven't put on these signs yet.
Okay.
So if that's something we need to maybe focus on, but remember, we can only have 4 lines in there, so we need to determine which is higher priority.
Well, on sign 4, if a biathlon had something on sign 4, that would get them going in the right direction.
But those are all going right.
Those are all going right
We
to
need
Hogan.
to go left to,
But could there be an arrow that says biathlon to the left?
Ryan or Kenny, maybe you could answer that about sign 4. We have a distance to Hogadon ski area. Is there additional room for another line there?
We took off the distance to Hogadon, then it would be possible, but the logic behind having all of the directions pointing right is going back to that decision-making time and reducing as you're coming around that corner. We couldn't space sign 4 any closer to the corner, or else you wouldn't really notice it and have time to read it. And when you're reading it, you see 3 destinations, all of them pointing right, and then as you move on to 5 and 6, you're able to see that those destinations are moving left. I think that our preference would be, if we want biathlon to be listed earlier, to eliminate one of the destinations on either sign 5 or sign 6 and replace that with biathlon. But as we were thinking through and replacing all of the signs that are where sign 6 is currently located, these are what we thought were the highest priority from this far away. But if you have a recommendation, we'll gladly hear that out.
I think on just a suggestion of sign 5, if we could eliminate camping and put biathlon in there, because camping you have also at the archery range, so it's not only limited to the left turn.
So, that's a fair consideration. I wonder if instead of eliminating camping, since we're leading individuals to Wyoba, Bear Trap, and all of the campgrounds that are heading left and up the mountain, I wonder if eliminating Bear Trap, since that is an example of campgrounds, instead of camping, because camping is pointing at all of our campgrounds as we head left.
I would prefer to leave camping on that sign because there's 4 camp spots at archery range and which probably accounts for 10% or less of the total camping on the mountain. So the bulk of the camping is ahead. Bear Trap, we left that on there mostly because probably the festival is a big portion of that.
Yeah.
Well, we could also eliminate maybe Camp Wyoba from sign 6.
Yeah, I would vote for that one, because we have that further when we're down to Lions Camp and Camp Wyoba. 'Cause
But that one is facing north. You're talking about sign 11?
sign 9,
Six, I think.
Oh, sign 9.
well, 6 would
6.
be where we would eliminate,
Right.
because it's replicated later on at
sign
9.
9, okay.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, then sign 6, where we are driving south, heading up the mountain at that intersection, we're considering eliminating Camp Wyoba and replacing that with
Biathlon.
yes, with biathlon. Michael, any thoughts on that?
I'm okay with that. I guess the biathlon is more of a public use venue. They hold events there that are more oriented, I guess, maybe towards the public than Camp Wyoba. Camp Wyoba is, maybe I'm thinking out wrong there, but
I think you're right. Somewhere on 5 or 6, we need to get the biathlon. I think that's the best one right now is Camp Wyoba.
So if we have to lose one.
If we have to lose one, because you're right, you don't want a 5, 6, 7 of these things on there, nobody will ever read it.
yeah, so I think we have a consensus here that we would replace Camp Wyoba with biathlon on sign 6. All right, is everybody ready to move on, or do we
One
have-
more. On sign 4, I don't think you need to have the mileage to Hogadon. And we may want to assign that as Hogadon Basin.
Yeah, because,
Hogadon ski area?
Well, it's
I don't know
Hogadon
about-
Basin ski area.
and they
Yeah,
have
we're limited
summertime
to the number of
characters.
characters
Okay.
across there. Part of
We
why,
could do.
go ahead.
I was going to say that we might be able to work Hogadon Basin. Ski area would be too long unless if we took advantage of those 2 lines if we wanted to eliminate the mileage.
Or put ski area or something underneath Hogadon, right where you have the mileage. Maybe we can put something in there. I don't know.
Excuse me, Stuart, I'm out.
Yeah, I would say that less is more. It might not seem like it right now, but as a rule of thumb on this kind of signage, less is more.
Right, right. 1 second here. I have one public person here who has a lot to do with Hogadon.
No, pardon my interruption, I'm just trying to understand the structure of this meeting. Will there be public comments?
There will be, yes.
Okay, should I just wait then?
If you have a comment on Hogadon ski area,
Well, I have a lot of comments.
well, that's the one we're looking at right now.
So is this, Jim.
That's the one we're looking at right now. Do you have a comment on that?
I just look at all of this through the lens of the visitor.
Okay.
The visitor doesn't care if it's basic, they care if it's a ski area. Hogadon, ski area.
They can't hear him.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one then at this point, and we'll get your public comments.
So have we decided if we're leaving the mileage or not? We only have mileage on 2 signs in this whole package. We have it here at the Y to how far Hogadon ski area is, and we have it one more time for Ponderosa Park before you make the big turn to the south, saying basically, you're on the right route, but it's another 2 miles into there, because it's, I think, 7 miles from from Casper Mountain Road. Those are the only 2 places we have mileage in this package. And that's just because of the distance to those locations, to kind of reassure people that you got a ways to go. So that's all I got about 4, if we decide to leave the mileage or not. I can revisit that if you'd like.
Yeah, let's come back and revisit that. Again, this is our first real glance at this, so we're learning the rules as we go. Let's go ahead and go on.
All right, so we've gone through 4, 5, and 6 before the Y. We're gonna continue on what I call the main trunk. We're gonna go to 7. The main trunk is Casper Mountain Road. We'll come back and revisit Hogadon Road as the west leg of it, and then the east leg is East End Road. It's just a way for us to delineate where these signs are, so we're not jumping around. So sign 7 is actually headed down the mountain. And so that provides you that Casper's ahead, Archery Range, Camp Sacagawea, and the Hogadon ski area are to your left. So you need to make that hard left turn. Sign.
So if we're gonna change that first sign to Hogadon ski area instead of just Hogadon ski, so it should be the same?
They'll catch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure they're consistent throughout. There's not,
I just don't think we have the space in there to put area.
yeah, so.
Exactly. I know we tabled it on the last discussion point, but that was the reason why it says Hogadon Ski on sign 1, because there's only space to consistently call it Hogadon Ski. So previously we had called it Hogadon, and thought that if you're heading up there and you know the name, then it'll get you to your destination. But if you're unfamiliar with the name, we understand that, and adding in ski was our way of trying to hear the public comments that came in earlier.
Okay, thank you.
So as we move on to sign 8 is as you're headed south, you're gonna see the sign before you reach the trail center. So this is right before Struby Loop, the one way out of Struby Loop. And so it has the trail center ahead, Elkhorn Springs ahead, Bear Trap ahead, and Muddy Mountain ahead.
Now, a question that's going to get started on this sign and continue to others is, how are we distinguishing camping areas from other recreational areas? Like Bear Trap is a multi-recreational area, but Elkhorn Springs is just a campground, if I'm correct. Do we have interest in iconography or anything like that to identify what recreation is available at some of these? Because
That's a good question. I'll start off by stating that when that comment came in, we looked into it and tried to make sure that we were able to address it as best as possible. Originally, we had just called Bear Trap as opposed to Bear Trap Campground, or having the campground icon on the sign. As you can see, we can't fit campground on there, or camping space, and the MUTCD dictates that the smallest size for iconography on these signs, granted that it's all predicated on road speed, so if we're on a road that is 35 miles or slower, so the smallest size that we can have would be 18 inches by 18 inches, which is just, it completely blows out of proportion what we're able to put onto these signs. So this is our way of trying to thread the needle between what the DOT will allow us to do, what federal highway will allow us to do, and then also trying to make sure that people can get from A to B as safely as possible, and letting them know what is at their destination.
I guess what I would prefer is we call out Lions Camp, we call out Camp Wyoa, those are camps in the traditional sense of like a forested camp in the Northeast. It's a lodge with different amenities. It's semi-private or private, where if we say bear trap camp, everybody's gonna kind of think that same consensus. So I'd actually go with just bear trap there, since we're not calling out Deer Haven Camp Ground or some of the other campgrounds. And like Ryan said, sometimes simpler is better.
I would second that too. Let's get out take the camp out of Bear Trap.
Well, if there's not enough information on one sign, is there anything against having a second sign next to it?
Well, these are, what are the dimensions of the sign, Ryan?
Give you the exact dimension here. Just give me 1 second here.
They're large.
Ryan, as you're pulling that up,
Very large.
I also want to bring up the point that and I hope that I don't sound like a broken record coming back to the MUTCD, but another piece of guidance is the spacing between signs. Like, yes, we can all read pretty quickly and like read through one of these signs, but as you're moving down 35 miles an hour, signs need to be at minimum 100, I believe it's 100 feet away from one another. Recommended that they're actually in that 175, 200 range. So that's the reason why, as you'll see in the system, we're trying really intentionally to make sure that there's adequate space from not only intersections, but then also making sure that sign 7 is spaced from sign 8.
Yeah, and these signs are 5 feet by 6 feet, so these are not small. They'll have 2 poles associated with them. The letters will be, 4 inches tall, and so they are quite large.
Make a great kite.
Does that answer your question?
That's not necessarily a funny joke, Kenny. There's a lot of wind that we have to deal with.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do
We've
you
had
wanna-
plenty this week.
Do you want to continue on, or where are we at?
Questions, gentlemen?
Michael, in a later phase, are we looking at having more entranceway signage at some of these areas like Bear Trap? Like, I'm just thinking about when I'm visiting National Forest or National Park recreation facilities at the entrance, then they'll have like Avalanche Creek Campground and then iconography saying there's hiking, there's boat ramp or camping. I think that type of information should be conveyed at some point, but as we've discussed, it's not appropriate for wayfinding signs.
Yeah, I think this template of a sign, to answer your question, if you went to sign E6, the second to last page, the bottom right sign, and it just says Ponderosa Park, that sign is going to be placed at the entrance to Ponderosa Park. So that sign, we could basically do, as we go down the road for the campgrounds, would be my understanding. If Kenny or Ryan think otherwise, let me know.
So some of the campgrounds, it's mixed, right? Some of them do have signs, some of them don't have signs. And we've discussed having monuments, for example, at the Trails Center. We've discussed having a monument at the base of the mountain. Sometimes we've talked about the archery range, and they all have different levels. And so, and there's different levels of intuition. Sometimes you know exactly when you've arrived, for example, at the Trails Center. When you're at the archery range, you need a reminder that you are now entering the archery range because you have to keep driving down the mountain and kind of get to that turnaround area. And so we're also trying to stay within a budget, and we think, we're in that 35 sign range is what we can feel comfortable bidding out in this first phase. And so, we could certainly add more signs, but we're trying to balance all those factors. So we can absolutely add it, But I just want to be mindful of all of those other factors that we're weighing as well. So we look to you to, direct us as to, if we feel as though we don't necessarily need them in every location because of the level of intuition. If you have a sign that says take the next left to go to the trail center, you don't need a sign that says you're now entering a trail center if that's the next drive. So bear trap, the sign says, bear trap to the right. You see it as you pass it in the meadow. It's fairly intuitive. Sometimes it's not, but I guess I don't know if you have anything else to add, Kenny or Michael, but
Yeah.
that's our reasoning.
Yeah, to add just a little bit, like the example that we use with Ponderosa Park, because that space is so vast, as you're approaching, it's very easy for you to drive past the boundary and not realize that you're there until you drive even further east and find the structure. But some of the parks like Lions, Wyoba, they have some of these existing signs which have a certain character to them, as opposed to a aluminum panel with two structural components, making sure that it is resistant to the wind. Those signs have a bit more of the character of the area, if you will. And though we want to make sure that we are thinking strategically and doing this right, I also think that we'll lean on your comment and direction about how to best preserve some of that character. As you were talking about the national park signage, as I'm heading into the campground, I am envisioning, and my expectation of what's letting me know that I'm there is a little bit different than the material character of what is telling me that I'm on the right path to get to that spot. So a little bit more of what we're thinking through and talking about.
And our kiosks we're going to have everywhere are going to give a lot more information. They're going to really break it down. That's the whole thought behind those. So you want to stop and see where the real campground's at. And hopefully the kiosks will guide us, I would hope.
A comment on sign 9, Lions Camp and Camp Wyoba. If a person was coming up that didn't know, I'm not sure you're legally, you're on private land once you get on Lions Club. To get to Wyoba, I'm not sure you can do that. They have signs there that say no trespassing. So I'm not sure that the public would be able to access Camp Wyoba from the Lions Camp.
So the reason we put those there is it's still a destination. They have user groups that use those two camps. And people do rent out some of those camps, I believe, but it's the intent for the user groups so that, when they have a big statewide gathering or something, they have an idea where those are at. So that's why we put those on that sign there. Did I answer your question or not?
I really don't know if someone's going to go to Camp Wyoba, they can't go through the Lions Camp to get there. Wouldn't that be up on K2 Road?
We'll have to check Mike and Michael, we'll double check the jurisdiction of that if there's public easement through there. Maybe we've overlooked that.
Yeah, okay.
And then on the reverse,
I think
it looks like you've got that split, that Y to Lions Camp and Camp Wyoba, regardless of which routing is correct, but you have it coming from north to south, but coming the reverse from example Bear Trap. You don't have that branch sign for Lions Camp and Camp Wyoba, so I think we would need to be consistent.
That's because, you mean the angle of the arrow? So
No, I'm just saying that you'll see it's coming from town, going up, you'd come to the junction where you'd have to turn right to go
Right.
Lions Camp. But if you're coming from Bear Trap, there's no signage to say, oh, you need to turn left to go to.
So the reason for that is sign 11 is quarter mile or more from that junction maybe?
Yep.
So there's quite a distance and you have, on the left, you still have I thought there was another access road off of there before you get to that point. That we didn't want to
I
miss.
think the majority of the users come up from Casper. So when you have to make decisions about which way we sign, I think 9 out of 10 visitors are coming from Casper versus the other way.
Agreed. That just would make sense then to drop them from sign 11. Because sign 11 gives you the general direction to go, but then you have no final direction to the turn. So that doesn't seem to be a logical progression. If we want to, for cost and efficiency means, sign it from the principal direction of use, that's fine, but if we partially sign it from the other direction, I think that is going to detract from the overall experience.
That's a fair comment, and like if we think that we want to remove lines and Wyoba from sign 11, that's totally fine. Part of what we were thinking of as well is that when we're heading towards town, you do pass by the, like, I wouldn't call them monument signs, but you do pass by the wood signs.
The
that are
actual,
just off.
yeah,
So
the
as-
actual camp signs. Gotcha.
So if we were able to add a sign, that might be a potential is closer to that intersection, have a sign just like number 9, but reversed.
Or if the actual camp signage is sufficient from that direction, as
Right.
he just mentioned.
Yeah, and that's
that
a good
would-
point.
yeah.
Okay,
I didn't think of that.
so we'll leave those on sign 11?
Now, where's sign 11 going?
That is coming from Bear Trap towards the Skunk Hollow turnout.
So it's going to be right there at Skunk Hollow?
It's a little before, it looks
Okay.
like.
In the S-curves, kind of.
Yeah, in the S-curve before Skunk Hollow.
Okay.
Questions, concerns from any more of these, this set? All right, Michael, go ahead.
All right, so sign 10, same kind of thing. We provide Bear Trap, Deer Haven, Muddy Mountain as you're headed south with Elkhorn Springs Campground. This sign's right before you turn into Skunk Hollow on Struby Loop. And it's just saying Elkhorn Springs Campground's ahead. We could do either Elkhorn Springs or Skunk Hollow on that for campground. I could go either way. Any questions on that one, or?
How do we have the campground signed? Is it at Elkhorn, or
Well, we have,
what's up there now?
we have 2 campgrounds. We have Elkhorn Springs and we also have Skunk Hollow.
Skunk Hollow,
Campground.
okay.
And they're both that direction.
Right there.
We chose the Elkhorn because it's the first campground you get to as you turn.
Okay.
Sign 11, we discussed, that one's as you going north, headed towards Casper. Sign 12 is before you reach the turnoff to turn into the west end of the west loop of Bear Trap. So that has Deer Haven and Crimson Dawn ahead, Tower Hill to the left to indicate go up East End Road, and Bear Trap is right ahead.
On that one, do we want to route traffic to Crimson Dawn up the South Crimson Dawn Road, which is horrible, or down East End Road?
I'll answer that. Our thoughts on that is a lot of people want to stay on the pavement as long as they can.
Yeah.
And hopefully someday we improve that road going in there. But there's 2 ways of getting there, and you have to really sign them both because of fire and emergency ambulance care, that kind of type of thing getting there as well. So that a lot of those people are familiar when they come from Casper.
Any other questions on,
Good there?
I lost which sign I'm on. 12.
You're on 12.
12, okay.
Oh,
So if you flip to the next map, this is what continues through Bear Trap, so you see 12 at the top left. Sign 13 is you're headed south, basically shows that the assembly camp's ahead, Crimson Dawn's ahead, and Muddy Mountain's ahead. This is right after you pass East End Road turnoff. And then basically the sign on the other side facing north that you would see as you're going north shows Casper and Elkhorn Springs are ahead, Tower and Biathlon are to the right. So if somebody's in Bear Trap camping and they're gonna go use the Biathlon or something and for summer training or something, they know they need to take a right turn there before going further down the mountain.
So we're missing any guidance on the East End Road for biathlon from city? We've got it from the other direction. Sign 14 has it coming from the other direction.
Correct.
E2 and E3?
No, this
check
would be somewhere between or on sign 12 and sign 13 would be appropriate to have a southbound directional sign like where we have for Tower Hill on sign 12. The biathlon is also that direction up East End Road. Like we have on sign 14, we have Tower Hill Biathlon to the turn, but on sign 12, because we've got so many items, I guess biathlon fell off that one.
Yeah, we basically prioritized, is how we came up with the top four there. If we wanted to take one of them off there, we could, but, you know, we're guiding to public campgrounds.
But there'll be a kiosk there, right, in Bear Trap? That would signify,
Yeah, eventually. Actually, the kiosks are more planned towards where the north outhouses are, so that once you get, instead of being on the parking lot, because if you put that right at the edge of the parking lot, it makes it difficult pushing snow to clear that parking lot. You got people backing trailers in. It's not protected, and we're looking at risk for damage there. So,
but that kiosk would indicate that Bear Trap is camping. I guess that's my point. If we're going to put biathlon in place of Bear Trap, we're going to have a kiosk that says basically
Well,
camping.
for that one, since we have Deer Haven, Crimson Dawn, Tower Hill, and Bear Trap, Deer Haven is also assigned nearer to the entrance to the campground on the next sign, 13. So that's a duplication. And I think I would prioritize biathlon over Deer Haven Campground in terms of multiple repetitions.
so you're suggesting to remove Deer Haven from sign 12 and put biathlon in its place?
Well, put biathlon with Tower Hill, since they're both to the left.
Right.
So we'd have Crimson
Yeah.
Dawn straight line, Tower Hill, biathlon left, or whatever order you'd want to prioritize those two. And then Bear Trap to the right.
I'm going to throw out an idea to the group. Feel free to shoot it down. With Crimson Dawn being the further destination, on wayfinding signs, repetition is not a bad thing. Just having that sequence of moving you through. Don't disagree that biathlon is important, that we should have it on there. Since Crimson Dawn is further away, I am not opposed to us removing Crimson Dawn, replacing that with biathlon, so that we're able to sign more frequently as you're approaching Crimson Dawn of you are on the right path and keep you going, just so that we all, but I think both of these options are amenable.
So what are you suggesting to remove it, to replace biathlon on sign 12? Was that remove Crimson Dawn?
Yes.
I don't have an issue with that. Does anybody have an issue with that?
Not, and particularly speaking, seeing how you can get it at both directions there. You can go east end or continue straight. So Crimson Dawn.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to sign 13. which-
Michael, did we agree that we're taking Crimson Dawn off of sign 12?
Correct. That's my understanding.
Okay. Okay, that's what I have in my notes, so we'll carry on. Sorry, just want to confirm.
No, that's good. So sign 13 shows Assembly Camp ahead, Crimson Dawn ahead, Muddy Mountain ahead, and Deer Haven. I think everybody was okay with that. Sign 14 is headed north. We talked about that, and nobody had any issues with that one.
Correct.
Okay. Sign 15 is before you reach the south exit of Bear Trap. As you're going south, it shows Crimson Dawn, Muddy Mountain ahead, Bear Trap Camp to the right, and Assembly Camp to the right.
Do we need the assembly camp?
Well, that's,
We have it on 13. I'm not
this
sure
is
we
where you
need,
turned for it, basically. So the other one said ahead. I did get some previous comments about access to the assembly camp and how they actually bring folks in there. So we probably need to get that clarified a little bit. I'm not familiar with, what's that?
Can't get there by this one. You reach the assembly camp on KG.
So we need to look at that and possibly
I can
remove.
bring you all the documents you need, but you can call them and find out, and you're directing them up a closed road, by the way.
So Bruce, they can't go through Bear Trap Meadow and up the hill and come back out
You
KG
don't want
Tower.
vehicles on that hill. It says it. It says on the sign. You don't want vehicles on that hill, and the assembly camp doesn't want you to go up that hill. And they have a sign on K2 Tower Road, and that's a private camp. They don't want visitors there.
So here
They'll
again,
get thrown out.
here again for fire, ambulance and all
I
that.
don't care, I'm just telling you.
When we go up it, I've been up it. The firework.
I can bring you all you need.
Well,
Tell
here,
me.
here again, I think the intent is destinations and how you can get there, so we could check into this and see what the camp would like us to post.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'd recommend. Contact all the private or semi-private entities and confirm that they are okay with the routing or get their preferred routing.
And if I may, check into your own rules about what roads are.
Well, I'm just,
Because I travel that road often, I'm good, and I'm right.
yeah.
So just to kind of continue this on, we're going to check into the camps and what they, if they want signage, wayfinding signage to their camps to clarify that. So there may be a few corrections as we get that information, Ryan and Kenny, and I'll try to be real diligent about that and getting that quickly so that we can, you know, move this down the line without delaying the schedule too far.
Yeah, and that sounds good, and I would add that have, you know, since 50% of the audiences use their phone to get there, or their GPS, we want to make sure that, you know, our system is in alignment with what iPhone or your, I should say, Google Maps or your Apple Maps are directing you as well. And if, for example, the assembly camp says something different than that, then we need to, it would be wise of assembly camp to submit a request to change the directions. It sounds kind of goofy, but there's a lot of people now that are looking at their phone and it says go this way and the sign says go this way, and then they're, you know, it creates more confusion.
Okay, Stuart, you want me to continue on to sign 16 or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We're just going to make some changes if these folks don't want us on their assembly, we'll.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we'll
sign
definitely change
16's pretty simple. It's right before you get to the Crimson Dawn Road. It says Muddy Mountains ahead and Crimson Dawn is to the left. Are there any questions on that one and location?
No, looks good.
Sign 17 is at the bottom of that map, and it is close to,
That's what I was looking for.
it's not too far before you get to the end of the pavement.
Yeah.
Okay? And basically it says Muddy Mountains ahead and Highway 487's ahead. We had some discussions about, you know, do we need to put the reservoirs on there, some other directions, so we simplified it to a major highway for them to get there.
I think that's best, yeah.
And then sign 18, I do not have on any map. I just didn't decide to print it. It's down at the four-way at the bottom before you start climbing up to Muddy Mountain. And so it provides one last direction. That would be the last sign we intend on the main spur. So if we go back to the east spur, you can stay on the same map that we were on. E1 is there at the towards the bottom of East End Road before you get to the Mountain Road. And this one's as you're approaching Casper Mountain Road. So as you're coming down the hill, East End, it basically gives you some direction that you're gonna head back to Casper if you take a right. You're gonna head to Bear Trap, Deer Haven, and Muddy Mountain if you take a left on the Mountain Road. And then,
What is that?
18, he doesn't have it on the map.
No, E1.
so E2,
E1 is the base of Tower on the or east going Casper Mountain.
so I'm gonna jump around a little bit, or I can just tell you, E2 is as you go up East End Road from Casper Mountain Road and you make that big turn as you're going up the hill, the big 90-degree to go east. And it's on this map. I don't know if anybody can see it. It's on that one somewhere. So that one indicates biathlons ahead, Crimson Dawn's ahead, and a church camp, which that'll be another one we need to ask about, which is back behind the slash file, back in there. Any questions on those? Or just the same camp issue, we need to find out what they want?
Definitely need to find out what they want.
Okay. So then E3 is as you continue further east, it shows Biathlon and Ponderosa Park are ahead. The church camp and slash pile are to the left. I think the slash pile should probably stay on there just because a lot of people use it. I don't know, maybe it doesn't need to be on there because it's just a mountain local kind of usage.
Yeah. Nobody's coming up from Casper to go.
We
to
were
Sassafras.
advised that,
Go ahead, Ryan.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we were advised that a lot of people cut through the campground to get there, whereas if we had a directional sign indicating a different route, that would be much better so that people aren't getting covered in dust. I think it was, that's how it was phrased, but
Yeah, that's correct.
that's why.
That's a good idea, and that's correct, so we'll leave that on there. Then sign, if we go to the last map, the 8.5 by 14, in the bottom left, you can see the outline of Crimson Dawn Park. And East End Road's right above that, and there's a sign there, it's hard to read, but that's E4. Okay, and E4 basically says, as you're leaving Crimson Dawn on the Crimson Dawn Road, the biathlon's to your left and Ponderosa Park's to your right. We had discussions about having a sign further back, but with the way the snow is handled in there, Road and Bridge did not think it would survive. So this is right before you get to the stop sign, basically, to give you an idea that you either go left or right, and this is what you get.
So which way do you go to Casper?
Well,
That's a place where a lot of visitors come to, so.
that's a good point. So that sign could be expanded to include Casper, correct, Ryan?
Good recommendation.
Yeah, we're talking E4?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay,
because
so
you're kind of back in the sticks there, so.
So we're gonna add Casper to that, underneath biathlon, or however you guys wanna orient that. I'm not sure what's best there. So E5 is pretty simple. It's
Now,
just-
where does E4 go, Michael?
Okay, it says you leave Crimson Dawn and you approach East End Road. So as you're
Okay,
leaving out of there,
okay.
and it's gonna direct you left or right on East End Road before the stop sign. I think there's a stop sign
The
there.
stop sign
Yeah.
at Crimson Dawn?
Yeah, as you're
No.
exiting Crimson Dawn.
Coming onto East End Road. Where the
Okay.
snowmobile trail crosses right
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then E5 is just a sign towards Ponderosa Park, because how far back in there it is. It's basically tells you that you're gonna be the fence tells you this too, but it's telling you that you're gonna turn right instead of somebody trying to go through the fence. And then the last one's at the entrance to the actual park itself, for Ponderosa Park.
Does anything need to be on the first one, on East 5? Once you take that right to go down towards Ponderosa on East End, that is all private property in there, on both sides?
I believe so,
Still a county road.
but it's county road all the way in there.
Right, but does anything need to say private road, or private,
Well, if we,
yeah, stay on the trail, private road or something like that? Because a lot of people just go straight, and then they get into that gate, and they get into private property if they don't take the right down to Ponderosa.
But so I think that's why we're indicating the arrow to the right,
at a distance. We got,
and a distance of how far you're still going in there. As for denoting
Yep,
private
we had-
property, I don't think that's part of our wayfinding program. I think the landowners are pretty good at doing that.
Yeah,
I
we'll
would
mark
think
the
that
park
they'll-
boundaries, interior, but we wouldn't mark private property with a vehicular signage system typically.
Okay.
And Michael brought up a good point that there's a sign there. We had discussion internally as to whether or not we even needed this sign. And to get to clarifying what you're talking about here, just making sure that those aren't familiar with the area know, all right, I can't go forward. That fence, and then also the fact that the sign is telling me that I need to veer right, are the two indicators that tell me, like, right is okay, forward is, I don't know, like, hard no.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the summary. I probably got into the weeds a bit much, but I wanted to make sure it was clear our intent, so.
One question on E2, that's up by the Tower Hill Campground. Is there existing campground signs? Because we have indicators for church camp and the slash pile.
What number is that, Doug?
E2, but no indicators that the Tower Hill Campground is a turn there?
I think that could be easily added onto that, correct, Kenny? On E2?
E2,
Yeah.
Yeah, because
we have a left on E2, we say take a left for Tower Hill.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have that.
Okay,
Or-
I have, I'll show you what I got. I don't know if you can see that or
Have to lift it
not.
up a little,
up a little bit, there you go.
A little higher.
a
Okay,
little higher.
There you go. That's what we have for E2. On
We'll make
what-
sure it's on there.
Okay.
Okay,
And we got 4 on E3. E3's at,
what's that? That's the West Spur. Oh, I guess I forgot the West Spur. We haven't done
Yeah.
the West Spur once we get to that point, sorry.
You guys ready to go to the West Spur? Doug?
sure.
All right, let's go ahead and on to the W's here.
Okay, so let me figure out which, I probably want to go back to the map with the Y. With maps 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. So W1 is as you're leaving Hogadon, headed back to Casper, right before you get to the Y. It's basically gonna tell you to go left to get back to Casper, and go right if you wanna go to Trail Center, Bear Trap, or Muddy Mountain.
That's coming down, that's going north?
That's
Yeah,
leaving
it's going
Hogadon,
north.
coming down to the Y intersection by the before the mailboxes.
So wouldn't Casper be the other direction? Am I wrong?
No, you're
No,
you're headed north.
You
so-
could interpret it as forward, but what we were trying to do is just make it as clear as possible of you've only got two directions. left, right, and so as you're heading down, heading north, you could interpret that as moving forward, but just to clarify and make sure it was as clear as possible for everybody, left and right is what we chose to go with.
We could do upper left, Kenny, as a compromise.
Yeah.
It also helps if I look at the right map, so, the right picture. Thank you. That's good, all right.
All right, so the next sign is W2 as you're headed into the Hogadon area. So Hogadon Ski's ahead, Camp Sacagawea is ahead, and Archery Range ahead. And this is right before you get to the K2 Tower Road. And so we made a decision to add K2 Tower Road there. I guess opinions, thoughts?
It just seems to be the first time we've come across that on any of the signs is additional road label. That just jumps out at me as being
So
a
you-
little odd.
You don't feel it's necessary to basically,
I don't know, is K2 Tower Road signed with regular road signage?
Doesn't it have a
Regular
street
green
sign?
Street sign?
Can't remember. Is it Bruce?
Public property.
Is there a street sign at that that intersection?
No.
Okay.
No public property.
Right. Being there's no public property back there,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah, I would.
rather take that off.
all right, so.
Just to make sure I heard that right, on sign W2, remove K2 Tower Road.
Correct.
Yes, take that off.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks for clarifying, Kenny. W3 is as you're approaching Hogadon and you're approaching Micro Road, so you're about to make a choice there, continue straight ahead or go left. So Archery Range and Camp Sacagawea are left, Hogadon is to the right.
I think that's Bruce's cabin to the right. But yeah, no, we were good.
Okay. And then,
Could put Bruce's house on that.
We could put Bruce's house on there.
there's room. Free hot
There's
chocolate.
public property there.
Free hot dogs, that's right.
Just put free hot chocolate. No. So W4 is basically a similar sign, but it's as you're leaving the Archery Range
Going
and
east.
headed back to town on Micro Road. It's going to tell you that Hogadon Ski area is to your left and Casper is to your right.
I like that.
And then W5 is as you're going down Micro Road before you get to Archery Range Road. It tells you that Camp Sacagawea and the Science School are ahead, and Archery Range should be to the left on that one. Is that correct, Kenny? Maybe you might.
That's correct, yeah, we're missing an arrow on that.
Yeah. And then the last sign we have is W6, which is as you've left the Archery Range and you're approaching Micro Road. It tells you Camp Sacagawea is to your left, Hogadon Ski and Casper are to your right. So basically, we picked the bigger landmarks for a few of these signs, because most people that get this far in there, remember they passed Hogadon, or the sign that says Hogadon, because it's kind of a unique word. And so that's the summary of it.
A few comments on sign W3. Should Hogadon be at the top, and should the arrow be straight since you're continuing on Hogadon and not turning left onto Microwave? So I just think that's just a small.
When you're on that road, or at least when we drove it, there's a widening, if you will, which if you're unfamiliar, we just thought that to clarify but that it could be.
Okay, then I'd just
Oh, I was
question
looking at
the
the wrong sign,
ordering
excuse me.
at least, because I think Hogadon is going to be the principal destination there, so maybe it should be on top. I don't know. Just a thought.
Wait, would you say
That's
that,
W3?
W3.
are you talking about sign W3?
Yes.
Okay, the reason why Hogadon is not at the top, it just goes back to the MUTCD, where they state the order in which you have to denote arrows and the turns. So if you look back on some of the other signs, we stay consistent with our order of, if you're going forward, we tell you first. If you're turning left, we tell you next. And then after that, we'll tell you about turning right.
Gotcha.
Questions, concerns about any more of these? Mr. Hagler, you've talked to them about where to put these signs so you're not knocking them down with snow plows and things and burying them and,
No guarantees.
okay.
Put a target up, they hit it.
Yeah, I hate to see one of our new signs sitting in a snow pile.
Yeah, we spent a lot of
We-
time
we
taking
did
that
spend-
into account with RDG about snow loads and plow turns and all of that to kind of increase the survivability of these signs.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say we also spent a fair amount of time analyzing each location and both the movement past the sign and then also the vertical gradient or the vertical change in the roadway itself, because what looks okay in 2D doesn't necessarily work in 3D. For example, the sign, take a left to the trail center. There's some trees that we'll have to remove to get that in there and make sure that you can see it for a long ways. Or I know as we were heading out to Hogadon, there was one of the signs that's probably to take a right or veering right that we had to, make some adjustments. So we did, there was a fair amount of ground truthing. In fact, each of these signs has been ground truthed.
Fantastic.
During the construction phase, we will have the contractor stake each location because we have made some changes since then. And once they've staked it, we'll sign off on it. If we had to make one last adjustment, we would still have that ability to do so.
Okay, before we open it up to public comment here, kiosks, what's our timing on those? What are we thinking?
So those are gonna be a separate phase
Right.
from this. I'll just comment on it real quick. We're waiting on a grant from the Land Water Conservation Fund to help provide funding for that. Those kiosks that are involved in there are biathlon, archery range, and bear trap. There's 4 of them, 2 at bear trap. The reason for that is the county owns those properties, where the trail center still is being leased, the county leases it from the city. So we needed to own the property outright, or we needed to show them a long-term lease to be qualified, and we just didn't have the time to invest in that. So the potential is there's gonna be a kiosk for the trail center when they plan the new trail center.
When you do the trail center, yeah.
And it would fall in line with the same type of style as the other kiosks throughout the parks. And so I don't have a good timeline on that. We have a budget for these wayfinding signs, these vehicular signs, and so we'd like to get that down the road and actually construct it and get something on the ground so that, show we're doing something and help improve access to our parks.
What is our next step here on this project with wayfinding?
Maybe Ryan can answer that best, the next step.
Yeah, so we're going to make the changes that have been asked of us tonight, and then we'll submit that to Mike and Michael. And then from there, there would be a public hearing at the county commissioner level. Effectively, if there were concerns, that'd be another checkpoint that people could come to. And then if the commissioners authorize us to move forward, we would then issue the advertisement for bids, move forward with the public bidding process. And so I would say, though, that if there are follow-up comments from this discussion or after you've slept on it, it's not going out the door tomorrow. We still have time. And we welcome that. And frankly, we've been trying to juggle, folks that, have so many different perspectives of how they use the mountain. And I think, the comments we've received tonight are great. And, but again, if you've got more comments, don't be bashful.
Okay.
So do we send those to you, Ryan, or to Michael, or how do we get that?
It might,
Mike and Michael.
Okay. That's just, I'll talk to this with some people, and they'll come up with some questions and that I didn't think of or we didn't think of. And I think we need to have that feedback from.
As soon as possible, yeah. We need to keep this rolling. So I've been on this board a long time. We haven't put barely a sign up, and we've been talking about it for 15 years, so.
But we got to get it right.
We got to get it right.
And can we post the latest draft on the park site or somewhere so people can review it and do offline comments?
yeah, I'll see about posting it.
Maybe just as a PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I'll do is, I'll coordinate with Kenny a little bit and see if we just want to post some of the red lines that I have on this that we have here that Kenny sent the other day, or if RDG wants to make the revisions and then we post that latest update so that,
Yeah, so we don't get repeats.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's have the latest, greatest.
I think we
still have
need to
public
make
do
the
here.
changes that we've heard. And
Agreed.
if there's any more changes that come in the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll consider those as well in this set of revisions. And then we will, work with you, Michael, to get a clean set. And that's what we'll use to get comments from folks that download it online.
Perfect.
That sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
It gives everybody a chance to look at it, hopefully over the break, if we can get it done by then. Because I know everybody's it's going to be kind of a little quiet in the courthouses for a couple of weeks here. It'd be nice to have folks looking at those. All right. Any other questions? We'll come back to board comments after public comments.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
So let's go ahead and let's open this up for public comments. We do ask you give us your name and your address, and speak into our microphone up here, please. Thank you.
Sean Reed, 819 East 12th, Casper. I just got a few questions. So, on your E6 sign, is that sign, Ryan, the same size as your other signage? So like sign 01? Is it the same size sign, you just turned it sideways?
Is E6, if memory serves me correct, is that the now entering the
Ponderosa Park.
Ponderosa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is not the same size, but the font and the pictograph at the top are, so it's not as tall.
So what size is that sign?
Let
The
me,
width is the same, but it's about 2/3 the height. We'll pull up the dimensions in a second.
Imagine the same would be for E5,
Oh yeah, you get
maybe
E5,
even
E4,
maybe.
W4.
Yeah.
And are the signs gonna be rectangular? Or are they gonna be this off weird shape?
They're gonna be this kind of angled shape.
Because so just as I own a sign company, and I can tell you that's gonna add $100 to every one of your signs. So just as if you're trying to get price point, I would suggest go to rectangular. You're gonna save literally $100 per sign, and aluminum's very high right now.
Yeah, one of the,
It's not a huge difference, so that's why I would say, if it was
Yeah.
a big difference and it made it look cool, I would say do it, but just as a sign perspective, you're gonna gain $100 per sign by doing that.
now, maybe Ryan can answer this. The MPO has a wayfinding sign down here with similar signs. Has that's been adopted or not?
yes,
Okay.
yes. So the sign sizes and shapes have been adopted by the jurisdictions that are a participant within the MPO, which does include the county, but Mills, Barnon, Casper itself.
So other cities are using the
have
same
adopted that.
style?
That's their plan. They're gonna use this design of
Okay.
sign, so we kind of want to stay with that as
Okay,
conformity.
and that's fine, I just wanted to
But
suggest
yeah, the
it.
cost.
That's a
yeah,
huge difference when you're talking as many signs as you're gonna do,
Yeah.
especially at the size of the.
The, many folks at the public input session, because we did have actually a square sign, and this goes back almost 2 years ago. They like the nod to the national forest or the national park signs in the way that they're tapered as well. And so to some degree, they're a little bit reminiscent of that. That's where it came from.
Okay. So, and the other things that I would say is, I would not recommend, or I don't think it's right for any private entities should not have any, their name shouldn't be on any of our signage, public-wise. So none of the camps, the Lions Camp shouldn't be in there. Sacagawea shouldn't be in there. Just as if they want a sign, they can go to get a permit, just like the rest of the companies.
So not even a sign directing them to the location.
Nope, if they want to put a sign up, they can get with the county, get a sign permit, put a sign up. Also, are they going to add, you said this is the first phase, are they going to add icons for your ORV stuff, your horse trail type stuff? Are they going to add that in?
Not on these.
So
This
where are
phase.
those going to go? Because that's a definite need.
Right, and right now is why I was kind of asking about the kiosk, which will be directing you there.
Okay,
That's kind of our next phase. I'm not sure what we really haven't talked about the rest of it, but it is a need.
The wayfinding signs and the kiosks and the secondary monument, primary monument was the basis of this. RDG, I don't believe was contracted to do trail signs per se. That would probably come at a later date. Right now, the major intent is let's show people how to get to these places. And so that's why this vehicular. sign
well,
is the
so
first
like where
phase.
we talk about vehicular is, if I want to go cross-country skiing, none of those signs tell you that. There's nothing on there that tells you that.
Right.
Nothing on there that tells you there's an ORV trail for four-wheelers. There's nothing on there for an ORV trail for snowmobiles.
But our
There's
kiosk
nothing
will
on
tell
any
you
of these.
that.
Right, but you got to get to the kiosk.
Mhm.
So,
That is a very fair point, and
There's
we've discussed
nothing
this
down there.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
there's nothing down the hill to get you there. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, I do.
And we don't, and we're
That's a fair
seeing an
point.
issue. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is that, for example, we looked up, if you're going to Sitting Bull Campground out of Buffalo and you're driving up the mountain on, I think it's US Highway 16, and you're going to take a right to go to Sitting Bull, it doesn't actually show the iconic, the pictograph or the depiction of camping. We checked out another campground or national forest in Wisconsin and another one out west in California. And in some locations, they actually do have the pictographs, and in the two that we looked at, they didn't. And we get this comment frequently. Most of the time, it is those signs are once you have entered the park or entered that area, then those symbols pick up. And so from a wayfinding standpoint, I hear you loud and clear that it would be nice to know if horseback riding or off-road vehicle driving or, those uses are allowed there. But in order to get all of the different destinations on a sign, you run out of room real quick. And that's the guidance that has been provided, down from federal highway into the MUTCD guidebook. And so I don't disagree with it, but we're trying to be consistent and follow the standards as best as we can.
And to add a little bit to what Ryan just said, as we were thinking through how to do this and do it best, the reason why, in our professional opinion, it makes the most sense to have those once you're within the campgrounds is because if we are to, one of the options that we were thinking through was, well, why don't we add one of these pictographs at the bottom of the sign as an addition, so it's not adding anything to our true sign proper, but at that point it starts to get a little bit convoluted and confusing, where you have a sign telling you Casper's this direction, campground this direction, other campground this direction, and then you have an icon which is just muddying the water. So you're not making as quick of a decision, and everything in the MUTCD is really just about helping end user make as quick of a decision as early as possible so they can get to that destination without impacting traffic flows.
Okay. So our reasoning would be, we see a lot of it is we're trying to keep people off of private land. And if you send a snowmobiler towards Hogadon, they're not gonna go anywhere but private land on a snowmobile or a four-wheeler. You know, there's not a trailhead that direction. So we need to do something with that. It may not be in this phase, we may end up being in another phase, but it needs to be addressed. We get a lot of complaints about it.
Who is we, I'm sorry?
I'm president of Casper Snow Gypsies.
Okay.
The other one I had was your Ponderosa Park sign, that's the E5. I think we need to add a sign or get rid of this one at where the road closes on East End after the snow is done, or when the snow's there. The road ends, there should be a sign right there to tell you there's Ponderosa Park that direction, instead of the one that tells you to turn right, because there is a sign there already. There's nothing at the end of East End Road to tell you to go that way. And it is a pretty cool little area for people to visit. I'm not sure what they call that.
So if I understand correctly, the comment is at sign E5, which is out near Ponderosa. You're on Ponderosa Road heading east. And, excuse me, let me navigate back on my map
So
here, which is not on the
E5
screen.
turns at Ponderosa Road.
You're on East End Road. You you go to the right, so you head south. You're saying that on East End Road, there needs to be a road end sign?
So at E5, I don't know that sign is really necessary. I would move and put a sign to tell you to go that direction by the fire marker. I can't remember.
6.
Fire marker 6. There should be after the snow load, so we don't plow it over. But it should be right there to direct people to go that way.
But there really isn't anywhere else you can go.
There's a whole lot of
Yeah,
private land right there.
There's a little bit on the logic behind that sign.
They don't know what's there, especially if the snow's there.
Oh, in the winter, you're talking about winter.
Yeah, I mean, I think E5 is probably fine in the summer, but
It does
I agree.
nothing for winter.
yeah, the winter, we
Yeah.
need to move it to where the road's closed.
Right.
So basically, Kenny and Ryan, we
Just
want to
snow
move
machine.
that sign west to where we close that road for the season.
No, we're not going to move it.
There's a fire marker 6 there, and that would basically allow the snow machiners that are going into Ponderosa Park in the winter, they would know how far it is to Ponderosa Park, and they'd know that it's ahead, because that gets groomed in the wintertime for snow machine use only, but that road is closed to the west of where E5 is. And we can work on
All
that
right.
and do that location.
They're still going to be confused when they get to the fence, though. They don't know.
There's a sign that says Ponderosa Park to the right.
At the fence.
There is a sign there, but it's on the fence. The part of the point of what we're trying to do with the placement of this sign is to get people to make a decision before they get to an intersection, even though this is just a continuation. I understand the logic of moving the sign west, but if the road is closed anyway, it'd be my understanding that we wouldn't have the issue of that sign being in use except for our snowmobile vehicles.
So that area gets used more in the winter than it does in the summer.
Yeah.
So it's
I
more
can
of a, you have snowshoers, you have bikes, you have snowmobiles.
So as a
That would
compromise,
just
I
be my
think
suggestion.
we should probably add one
Agreed.
That would
at
be
the
fine,
fire
yeah.
marker, not remove E5, but possibly add an additional sign
I'd say 100
at that
yards from the
location.
closure.
So we'll
We'd
get
like
you
to
the
get more
information
people
on
there
that
in
once
summer.
we're talking
Yeah,
about
for
it.
sure. And it would
Sounds
probably
good.
help in the
Thank you.
summer too.
There is talk about opening that road up for the winter too, so you know.
That'd be good to know.
Okay, so we're gonna have a new sign, E 4.5.
Yeah.
None of us can
For-
figure out
for
where on this
now.
map that goes, but
Yeah, it's hard to see on that map.
our road and bridge guy knows where that goes.
Trying to think if there was another one. The other recommendation I had from a friend was to add lodgepole to your Muddy Mountain sign. Lodgepole campground. A lot of people don't know it's there.
Lodgepole and ramp.
Right. I think those should be added, and you should go to a full-size sign on one of those so you can add them in. If those signs are smaller, I don't know what the size is. Did you figure that one out?
The smaller ones, I don't know that we got it.
The E6 or sign 17, any of those?
16, 17, and 18 all.
It looks like they're
When you
different
state
size.
the Muddy Mountain sign, are you talking about signs 17 and 18, or which sign number are you looking at?
So you got 16, 17, and 18. Should say Lodgepole Campground, and should go to the same style signage as signs 14 and 15. I don't know what the difference is in size.
Yeah, okay, we can add that. I think that we received an earlier comment during public input that perhaps those are not county facilities, but I think that's been discussed. So I don't have any reservations about adding it, but I'll defer to you folks.
They are not county, but they are public property. They're BLM surface utilized campgrounds. So the BLM operates those, which they're open to the public completely. So I don't have a problem putting those on there if we have the room.
Yeah, it'd be a great idea. I'd like to see something pushing you back to Muddy Mountain.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it gets
Just
utilized.
to ask the question, because it's what we talked about earlier on, because like Ryan said, we have no opposition to adding them to the signs. As we hit sign 18, that's where we have cut off additional signing. I mean, in an earlier iteration, we talked about continuing the sign to some destinations that were on Muddy Mountain, but since it was outside of the scope of this project, we're essentially taking these signs, 16, 17, and 18, signing for Lodgepole, and then cutting off, and then that would be the responsibility of the BLM to pick up on their property. Is that what we're proposing here?
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
So maybe 17 is the sign we want to use.
I'd probably put it on all three if it was my recommendation. And if they need to pick it up on their end, that'll, be on them. They have a sign right next to it, so once you reach it, but there's nothing to tell you to get there. So this would help drive people back to that campground.
Good idea, thank you.
I think that's all I got.
Is that all you got? Okay.
That's all I got for notes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for those comments.
Mr. Lamberson.
Bruce Lamberson, 2449 Hogadon Road. Been up there since 1974 and operated commercial ventures all over the mountain and continue to, and I'm a recreational user as well. As you know, this is part of a project that kind of coordinates and mixes with the Casper, or the Natrona County MPO organization. And I look back to what they're doing to try and figure out what we're doing with the county. And what I learned is, talking to Liz Becker and Craig Collins and Pam Jones with Community Development, and Renee Hardy, who's really spearheading the MPO version of this signage, wayfinding. A few things. One is they have not included, in fact, they've excluded anything other than public properties. No schools, no churches, no private camps, They've done that for a few reasons. One is liability. The other is, I assume when I see all these campsites or campgrounds or assembly or this and that you guys have spoken to those people. The Girl Scouts want people to know how to get to Sacagawea. The science camp was, I don't know about that. I don't know if because there's an implication when people see these on the signs that they are public. So, first of all, the city and the MPO organization, which is more than cities, a number of cities, chose not to pursue that route. And Mike, you're the rep from the county on that?
I am.
Well, along with Bertolio. Is that, so if I'm saying things that are wrong,
I'm on the
tell me.
technical committee, and Paul is on the policy committee.
Okay.
But right now, the city's not moving forward with any of that.
Right, but I've discussed this with all of them, and if I'm if I'm saying things that aren't true, I like to talk facts. So if I'm saying things wrong, you're welcome to correct
I
me.
believe there's merit in what you're saying. I wasn't in on those conversations about the privatized.
Okay, well, that's what I've been told by the people who are putting this together. The other thing is, as a resident of Casper Mountain, I'm very concerned about driving visitors onto private property. I spend a lot of time in the summer, especially the last 2 seasons, and in the winter, directing people, because of course we have no signs right now. But it's an issue, and it needs to be addressed very, very carefully, or you're going to get pushback from people on the mountain hard, and from visitors. And I'm trying to look at all this through the lens of visitors, not us who know our way around. People have never come to town, and they need concise, quick information to public facilities. And so what the MPO did was they put together an advisory board after their public hearings and all, investigated the content and location of all the signs. They've got their package together now. Now they're waiting for it, and everybody says they're at a standstill. Well, they are, but they've accomplished a lot of work, and they're happy with the products. They're waiting for agreements, budget decisions, and other things to move. So they're at a technical standpoint right now, but they've done the heavy lifting of designing the content and the location of the signs and what they're trying to accomplish with this project. And it's not to put people on private property. It's to get visitors on to public facilities, be it museums, parks, all these things. There were a number of private destinations in the city's list of stuff we should tell people, and they've been eliminated because they didn't fit that one criteria, and I think that's the case. That's what they told me. So, but the other thing I want to clear up, and maybe Ryan, you can help me, is the icons, the pictographs, the use of those or not, and apparently the direction's away from that, right? If I gather it right.
If I understand Bruce correctly, your comment or question is that the pictographs, we're steering away from that, and you're wondering why?
No, I don't need to get into that. It's getting late. But if that is the direction, I haven't seen any picture. I mean, to me, anybody in the world, whether they speak English or not, if they can see a sign and they see a tent, they're probably going to know that's a campground, because that's pretty universal. And we have visitors who don't speak English. But if that's the style of sign, and if that's been, if that's not an option, I'm fine with that. But the reason I bring it up is Elkhorn Springs, okay? We have signage for Elkhorn Springs. There's one reason to go to Elkhorn Springs, and it's not to see the springs, it's to see the campgrounds. So that if you don't have a tent, you should say Elkhorn Springs Campground, because the only other reason to go to Elkhorn Springs is to trespass on private property. Deer Haven, exactly the same situation. It's a campground only, and we see a sign that says Deer Haven. So people are roaming all over the mountain and go, oh, let's go see what's at Deer Haven. Well, there's campers there who have paid for their campsite, and there's entrances to private property. So that's trouble. that needs to say Deer Haven Campground to qualify roaming around on private property. That's what I'm getting at. So if it's not a tent, a little tent thing, that's fine, but identify the campgrounds as campgrounds. But anyway, I was impressed with what the MPO has done, and I think I have a good understanding of how they've done it, and good job. They're way ahead of us on that one. We've got a lot of work to do. One thing I did notice from MPO is they are in charge of the signage at Garden Creek and the Mountain Road. And just be sure that we've coordinated their sign with our sign 100 yards away, and they have the same content, or agreeable content, complementary content. And I think that's just something we need to be aware of. But from my standpoint, yeah, let's get visitors around easily, accurately, and let's keep them off of private property. And I would strongly suggest, I'm going to push this, and Ryan knows I've been trying to get sign content worked out since June, and we finally are looking at something, and frankly, I'm disappointed. But we got work to do. Let's stick to public property. And I don't know, there's a lot of risk with sending people to the Girl Scout camp who aren't invited, and implying that they can be there by the signage. K2 Tower Road, that goes to the assembly camp. There's 3 church camps up there, just in that area. There's Lions Camp, there's Camp Wyoba, there's the Baptist Assembly Camp. If you go into any of those properties, they're going to ask what you're doing there. Lions Camp, we entered just like Camp Wyoba across from the Trail Center. They have a huge sign there that says Camp Wyoba. We don't need to put a sign there. They'll deal with who comes in and out. The assembly camp, you go up K2 Tower Road, around the back, and you drop into it from the south. And they will stop you right there and say, what are you doing here? Some nice ladies sit up there and they just get you. So there's no reason to be directing people into K2 Tower Road, and just the notion of doing it kind of makes me wonder, what are we doing here? But anyway, moving on. Muddy Mountain, yes, that is BLM property. There are 2 campgrounds up there, Lodgepole and Rim, and there's trails. There's trails for disabled people, the ADA certified trails. There's some valuable Muddy Mountain property. But once you go up the Muddy Mountain Road, which, by the way, has seasonal closures, which maybe people should know about, and then you go almost 5 miles before you hit that BLM property. But they should know they're heading to the BLM campgrounds and trails, and we should have that on the sign at the bottom of the hill there before they head up there, I think. This is random, but there was a discussion of online mapping assets, okay? If you go to the web, mapping asset on your phone for OnX, the hunting one, you look at a road right across from Hogadon that says on it right now, I looked, County Road 504, okay? If you go to Google Maps, it says micro road, okay? And guess what? I own those roads. They're neither. Okay? They're closed. I do timber work back there. So I've corrected that thing with Google a couple times, and then somehow it switches back to micro road. So we have to be very careful to realize that what people are seeing on their phones isn't right either. All right? And I've done all I can to correct that. But here's what happens. We start looking at that, and then we also have to go to verbal discussions. So we say, well, let's coordinate this stuff. So we go today, an hour ago, you go to the county parks website, and you look at this one's, how do we get to the archery range? Drive south on Casper Mountain Road up the mountain at the crest, past the Broken Spur Cafe.
Which has been gone for a few years.
It's been gone for a long time. It's now called the Treehouse Cafe, and that's been closed for 3 years. That's what you run into when you mix private with public. So we're saying there, and then veer right at the Y in the road, traveling on the road toward the Hogadon Ski Resort. Quarter mile before Hogadon, turn left on Micro, go about a mile left, turn left before the small housing area, travel approximately 1/4 mile and turn right at the T in the road. Well, anyway, that's what happens when we mix these private things. It's also when we're trying to coordinate the wayfinding signage with the county's own website an hour ago, with Google Maps. At least Google Maps got that part right, but they didn't. You know, if you're really looking for micro road, you might wind up on my land. I don't know. We've got a lot of coordinating to do. Crimson Dawn. Okay, I get it about firefighters and all that stuff, but believe me, the emergency services people know how to get them around the mountain. And to direct people to Crimson Dawn on the old Crimson Dawn Road is nuts. The road sucks, it's lined with private residences, and it's farther than going out East End Road, which is a 60-foot wide, well-traveled gravel road that also goes to Biathlon and Ponderosa Park. You've got 3 destinations out there. Crimson Dawn is 100 yards off of East End Road, well-maintained, and to put people, first of all, to confuse them by 2 ways to get there, and then run them past all those private residences. In the spring, there's puddles and holes in there. In the winter, it's hard to get. I mean, I don't care if it's called Crimson Dawn Road or fire people. The fire trucks are not going to go that way because they want to get to the fire. They're going to go out East End Road. So why that sign is sitting there, I have no idea, but all the private property owners on Crimson Dawn Road are not going to want all these attendees going along that road and getting stuck and knocking on their door to get pulled out of the ditch and all. And Crimson Dawn is one of the most popular parks up there. So next, I just was knocking around the camp or the website. It got pretty interesting. Bear Trap, right now, is a jewel of a park on Casper Mountain. It is the only park where water is available. We haven't had water on that mountain in 2 years or more. But that's why people come to my house asking if I have water, and they've paid to camp up on the mountain. Talk about wayfinding. There we go, okay? Casper Mountain Trails. Okay, drive 5.4 miles south of Wyoming Boulevard and Casper Mountain Road. Continue driving south on Circle Drive. You following along? At the intersection of Micro Road, approximately 0.9 miles. You don't get to the trail center on Circle Drive or Micro Road. You go up Casper Mountain Road, you take a left at Hogadon, turn off, you drive down the road and stop. So this is on there. I'm going, my God, don't worry about Google Maps, worry about the county's website. South on Circle Drive to the intersection of Micro Road. They're in my yard. They're in your yard. They're in your yard. Jimmy, they're trying to figure out where they are. You know, so anyway, we got to protect the public property up there, and we got to help people. Visitors are embarrassed to get up there and get lost and be bothering people, have people yelling at them and stuff. And I love visitors, mostly. But I want to help them get where they're going. I don't like, we had visitors at the bottom of Hogadon this summer looking for Garden Creek Falls in passenger cars. I don't know, but we better tell them. But I want to tell them to go look for Elkhorn Springs, because that's not there either. It's a campground. So there's a ton of work to do on this stuff, and we better do it right. And I don't care if it takes another year. I'm willing to help. You guys are willing to help. You guys better relax and start working on what needs to be done here and really have a vision for what we're trying to accomplish instead of just getting it done. Seasonal closures, Muddy Mountain, 487. East End Road. Those are totally different roads in the winter than the summer. Maybe we need to address that. All right, for decades, literally decades, I've watched semis get stuck on Hairpin Turn because they look in their trucker's atlas and they see there's a quicker way to get to Laramie or down to I-80 through Medicine Bow. Saves them 20 miles. And they pull up the mountain, and they don't see the no-through traffic, or they just ignore it. They get hung up with big rigs on Hairpin, and Jimmy's been stuck there. We've all been stuck there. It's kind of hard to get off the mountain when you've got a semi hung up there in the middle of the winter. But they're just following directions. Now, Rand McNally, I've worked with them, tried to get them to get that atlas, because the guy's all hung up trying to
Excuse
back
me,
out of
Bruce.
there. Yes.
I was going to
Yeah,
ask,
we're
Mr.
just
Chairman,
stay
if there was a time limit or if we could stay on task.
We'll
We've
stay on
repeated
these
several
signs right
things.
now, yeah.
And-
Well, that's a sign thing. That is a sign thing, that road is closed in the winter. But it's a sign thing farther down. I'm just saying, we got to get good information.
It's not a
All
park
right,
sign, though.
let me look at a few more signs and I'll get out of your way. And thank you for the time. All right, assembly camp we already talked about. If you take all the camps that I don't think should even be on these signs and these private areas off the signs, you'll have a lot more room for what people need to know, which is it a campground? Is it a picnic shelter? Can I do some of the things Sean was talking about basic usage, biathlon? So anyway, I can go through all the signs, but I'm not going to do that. But be careful. There will be pushback if this project fails or if it gives bad information. And I'm sure of it. So we've waited a long time. Let's wait a little longer and be sure we get it right. And of everything that's happened, I'm just happy we got to see some stuff finally, because that's been a long time coming. If the commissioners were here, I'd really recommend we get a select committee that has the knowledge to really bear down on this thing and look at it. And the public hearings are great, I get that. Ryan's done a good job, and Kenny at doing those things. But you get a lot of information. It's time to really distill this down to every word on every sign in every location and keep an eye on what we're trying to do. And I can't say exactly what that is, but in my view, it's getting people concisely, visitors to proper destinations and eliminating conflict with private property. And I don't see why we can't do that, but we got a long way to go to do that. Good night. Thank you for
Thank
your
you for your time. Appreciate it. Any more public comments? All right, board comments. Jim, would you like to go first?
I don't have a comment at this point.
At this point, he has no comment, okay.
I didn't
Doug.
have a mic on.
I'd just like to reiterate, as I said it earlier, I also agree with the questionable value of county signage to private destinations. I also strongly think we should consider the Crimson Dawn directions out and East End Road.
Absolutely.
I've driven up that in the summer, and that road is horrible going in on the Crimson Dawn Road. It does look like we need to look into website updates. I don't know how we should best address that, but we should look into that. And I think that's all my comments, and I thank the public for coming out, and hopefully we'll get some more feedback. And I don't know whether we need to consider having a subcommittee or something to focus on further consolidation of the information, or continue in this fashion, but I'll just throw that out.
Okay, thank you. I agree with your comments. I agree with the public's comments here. We've gotten good information. Again, this is the first time we saw it. So, you know, we're trying to read and figure this out at the same time. We now have, Ryan, you're going to put together what we've already talked about today So we'll have some new pics, et cetera, we can throw on the website for public comment, correct?
Yeah, I think two things, maybe even just one item is the discussion regarding, we'll call it the private or the nonprofit destinations on the signs or not. And when you look at the MPO area, the geographic reach and the number of destinations within Casper, bar none, Mills is far significant than was up on the mountain. And so we had an opportunity to include those, understand the argument to not include them. We just need direction from the county on which way to go so that when we put this new sign system out, we've made that decision. It's not, we don't come back to it and then add them back on. I think that would be our request. So as soon as we get that direction from Mike and Michael, we'll update this and get it back to you.
Sounds good. Michael?
Yeah, we'll definitely coordinate that with you, and I'll get right on that and figure out the direction that we need to go with that, and give you confirmation one way or the other. Thanks.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I mean, we've got thick skin. Our feelings aren't going to be hurt either way. We're trying to help you solve this problem of getting people around the mountain, and so all valid points. This is not anything new from a wayfinding standpoint. You'd be surprised how passionate people are. Well, I think, Bruce, you've probably demonstrated that, but so anyway.
And he is just one voice. We take our private property to heart here, so very, very seriously. We do not want our folks on private properties. I personally also would love the icons. I mean, I'm a camper, and I can see that icon from quite a ways away and go, yep, that's the one. That's the right turn I need to make. But that just seems like something we can't put on these signs. And I don't want a Christmas tree of 30 little signs below it pointing this way and that. That's something we need to talk about. And maybe it is another group that we get together and we talk about the master sign plan for Casper Mountain and coordinate with Road and Bridge and the state maybe a little bit to know where they're at.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need a consolidated approach where somebody can go and find out what recreational opportunities are where. We don't have a real centralized place for that in town, and it would be nice to know that before you're halfway to your destination and having to make directional decisions. If I'm towing a snowmobile, am I going to archery range or should I go to Ponderosa?
Yeah.
But that's a challenge. How do we solve that? I don't have an answer for that.
I've always wanted some sort of flyer you could give out, but where do you give it out at? So that's a hard part. All right, any more comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Reed may have a comment.
Yes, sir.
Did we get an answer to the sign size for the smaller signs?
I don't think we did. Ryan, did you get a sign size for the smaller ones?
To be honest, I stopped looking. I'll have to start looking again. You got it?
Yeah, taller was
5 by 6.
exactly, and then the shorter was, we had, sorry, my screen moved on me. Four 4'3". Sorry about that.
Okay.
So you should probably just put that to the public so they realize how massive the other ones are when you put it out there.
That's a good idea.
Because it's not anywhere in here.
Nope.
Yeah, the PowerPoint had a scale model of a person beside it. That gave you an idea how big the big ones are. If we could also include that for the smaller one, maybe to show the size differential or something, but.
Well, and I believe we presented that, RDG presented that in June at the open house, the size of the signs and discussed it there. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, Ryan, but I thought you guys had it there.
Yeah, and it is part of the, if you look at the MPO master plan, which set the precedent, we do have the dimensions and scales within there, and this has kind of been carrying that forward. But we can certainly add the dimensions to the typical signs, and they're in the construction documents, the bid documents. But for this, we can add that. I think they are larger than what most people expect, but when you want to see them at 150 feet to 250 feet away, going 35 to 55, they get large quickly based on the best practices of the DOT.
I just think you should put it public when you do post.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will.
We'll make
put
sure
it up
that
there, the
they're
public.
aware of the size of the sign.
Yeah. So when you put something up on the public, when we do that part, if you can include the sign sizes, and maybe even that drawing with a person.
Well,
You already have those.
And Mr. Chairman, there is one out in Bar None that's actually up, if somebody physically wanted to see one installed,
Okay,
one of these signs.
all right.
Maybe you could take a picture of somebody standing next to it.
Yeah, could you send me the where in barn on that is?
I'll have to double
It's
check
right
it.
there as you go in by the hangar. It's got an antelope on it. Theirs has a different background than ours does. And it's the concept of what MPO came up with for the different cities. So Mills will be different, Evansville will be different with the backdrop. The mountain has the mountain obviously going on it, as would, there's a different one for the lake. If this moves to the lake, it has a lake scene on it. And we'd get you all those. I mean, they're out there ways where they happen, but same conceptual thing that was agreed on through the MPO and the committees that looked at those signs then, so.
Perfect, thanks. Any more? All right,
A lot
let's
of public meetings.
call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for your participation.